Doug Flaig has led teams inside some of the biggest franchise brands in the country. And somewhere along the way, a mentor stopped him cold and said, "It's not about you." That lesson shaped everything. Doug is the CEO of Stratus Clean. And today he gets into what it actually means to lead a franchise network through change without losing the plot. Welcome to Franchise Leader Spotlight. I'm Catherine LeBlanc. This series highlights the leaders shaping franchising today, how they built their careers, what they're focused on now, and what they believe is coming next for the industry. Let's dive in. Brought to you by my podcast host. Today, I am joined with Doug Flaig. He is the CEO of Stratus Building Solutions. Doug, thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure. It's so good to be here.
Good. I'm going to jump right in. I want to know, what is the most exciting thing happening for you right now?
We're going through some changes as a company. And so right now, change management is just a big part of the job.
Yeah.
It's fun, a little scary, requires a lot of collaboration, but it's given me a lot of energy. It's really something I'm excited about. And I think it positions us well for the future.
Well, so change is exciting.
Yes.
It's also scary.
Yes,
And change management is brutal.
it is.
Tell me more about how you're approaching it and how you're thinking about, because when we think about change management, specifically in franchising, it's not just about making the change, it's having that change trickle all the way down to our franchisees.
Yeah.
And I often see brands get this wrong. And so it requires a lot of planning, requires a lot of preparation. And I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about the planning and preparation you're going through for your change management.
Yeah, I think that, one of the things that's important to us in that process is like answering the why. Why are we doing this?
Mhm.
What is the purpose, right, for it? Well, how does this position us strategically? So the data has to drive that.
Mhm.
Customer feedback has to drive that. Unit franchisee and master franchisee in our model, we have 3-tier model,
Mhm.
has to feed all that.
Yeah.
And so we bring all that collaboration together. We want to answer that question for them. So once I've got that one over,
Yeah.
then the what gets a lot easier,
Okay.
right? You answer the why, then the what, and then how is we're going to roll it out. And then making sure that we're for those folks kind of really answering the what's in it for me in the whole process.
Oh,
For
absolutely.
sure.
That's sometimes the first thing you have to say with franchisees. And in your 3-tier model, though, how are you communicating that way? What specific tools or tactics are you using?
Yeah, we've got some regular forums where we get together
Okay.
as groups throughout
Mhm.
the month. So franchisees at different levels have different challenges. So if you're in a startup, right, in startup mode and you're just getting going and
Mhm.
it's early in your thing, you're facing very different challenges than someone's been around 10, 12, 15 years
Mhm.
and it's built they're billing $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 a month
Mhm.
in sales. You're in a much different place than the guy who just
Right.
started and is doing 25,000.
Right.
So we meet by tier groups. We call those tier groups.
Okay.
And every month this happens and
Mhm.
we talk through that. We have some of the more legacy guys come in and mentor the younger ones,
Okay.
or the newer ones, not necessarily younger.
Yeah.
But what we do is we communicate where we're going as a brand too,
Mhm.
but we bring it in a way so that meets them where they're at.
Mm.
So what does this mean to me? I just joined the brand. Like what's
Right.
happening? What's changing?
Yeah.
We can answer those questions where the more legacy guys, they're
Mhm.
familiar. We've been talking about it.
Right. Right.
I'm consultative and collaborative about it. So
Mhm.
that's one of the processes. And then just regular communication. Nature abhors a vacuum. And when there's no communication,
Yes.
no conversation, the vacuum gets filled with speculation and often misspeculation.
Yes.
So,
I love that you're bringing this up.
or phantom menace, right? Like just
Yeah.
even making up things. Like,
Right.
if I don't hear from my daughter and she doesn't get home on time, I don't think, oh, she probably stopped to help feed the homeless.
Yeah.
No, I'm thinking like worst case scenario.
Yeah.
And that's
Calling the
human
hospitals.
nature.
Yeah.
So making sure that we're communicating frequently and
Mhm.
often about that, no surprises, is super important.
You framed it that way because of course, we're always talking about communication in the franchising industry.
Sure.
And I think that a lot of times we think we're communicating and we think we're saying the message. And for whatever reason, the message isn't coming all the way down. And I think that your point around the vacuum is really important because it's not enough to say, this is what we're doing. You have to give the why, like you said, and that's part of that change management. And you have to be able to be open to answering the questions that come with the
Yes.
why. You can't be, this is what it is, and and this is the way it's going to go. And it sounds like those forums that you have on a monthly basis, there's a feedback loop that you can answer those deeper questions so that the speculation isn't happening without the person who has the answer.
I'd be remiss if I'd say the speculation still doesn't happen. right? Of
Right.
course. So
Yeah.
you still get some squeaky wheels here and there,
Hmm.
and that's fine. That's just
Yeah.
that's just part of franchising. But I find that the more we could communicate around that, the less of that happens.
Mm.
And then we're just on the same page, and
Hmm.
that's obviously a big benefit.
Yeah. Tell me, what's the hardest leadership decision that you're having to wrestle with right now?
One of the things we're going through that I mentioned to you a little earlier is a brand change. We're
Okay.
going to change the name of the company. So we're Stratus Building Solutions. People think we're like architectural firm.
Mm-hmm.
We build something.
Hmm.
We're, construction. The name is a little nebulous, right? And so we're going to switch to Stratus Clean. And so by the time this podcast rolls,
Yeah.
that'll be out there
Okay.
and that'll be good news. And so we think that creates clarity for our customers of what we are, who we are, what we do,
Mm-hmm.
what we excel in, kind of our hedgehog principle. And it's less explaining, right,
Yes.
of what we
Right.
are and who we are.
Hmm.
So that's going to be a big change. Just we making our colors more vibrant today. We're kind of a burgundy and gold,
Hmm.
and we're going to update that to some more contemporary colors. And it fits well with our brand and who we are. So
Hmm.
super excited about
Yeah.
that. Is that alone going to drive the business forward? No, I think it positions us for the
Right.
next phase of growth.
Right. Well, and I love that you have that point of view. As a marketer, you know, I will advise and talk to brands about brand and brand change. And I seem to find myself in brands that are always interested in changing their logo or changing their brand. And, there's times and places for that. But at the end of the day, the ugliest logo in the world is still going to drive business if
Yes.
you have the why clearly communicated to your customers of why they should care about coming to you. So I love that as the CEO, you understand that simply logo change and name change isn't really going to drive it. But what it does, to your point, is sets up that future growth and it sets up the hedgehog principle. And I love that you bring that up. So do you adhere to that good to great kind of philosophy, or,
Yeah.
tell me more about how you bring that to life in your leadership team?
Yeah, so definitely love Good to Great, and I also run the company on EOS,
Yep.
Entrepreneur Operating
Hmm.
System, and so everybody's got rocks, right? And we're hitting
Hmm.
that against our strategic plan of where we're going. So we're really delivering a lot on a regular basis to our franchisees,
Hmm.
and I think that adds value because it's easy to get lost in your head down in the day-to-day
Yes.
stuff.
Right.
And what I love about the EOS model, what I loved about Good to Great is I'm like, yes, but how? What I
Right.
feel
Right.
like for me,
Hmm.
for my team and a couple of companies I've run before,
Hmm.
EOS has allowed us to like answer the how, and it gets us
Hmm.
in a cadence and cycle. I'm not a purist, but I'm really
Hmm.
like we're pretty close.
Yeah.
So
Okay, good. Yeah. Again, in my practice, the hedgehog principle and staying focused on your why really seems to be a challenge for some. In your career, have you experienced companies that they have a why, but they don't know how to stick with it?
yeah, I'll give you an example. There was a concept I worked for briefly. It was a sandwich chain to remain unnamed.
Yeah.
Just exploded in
Hmm.
growth. They were opening I think 2 stores a day, almost
Oh,
every day,
wow.
like on a regular
That
basis.
is
Just
exploded.
explosive growth
Yeah.
and great product. Customers loved it. And what I would say, so this is my interpretation, I would say we lost our way.
Mhm.
We did some things as a brand. And again, it was a leadership in place at the time that made some decisions that got away from what got us there. They
Mm,
forgot what got us to where we
mm,
were, and instead, I would say, got a little greedy and added a little extra markup on our, acquisition of foods,
mm,
and enjoyed some of the luxuries that come with a profitable brand. And that took a distraction over the core day to day,
mm,
and getting away from unit level economics
mm.
was a miss because great product, good food cost, good unit economics, when those things keep rising and we're not driving top line, we lost our
Yes.
way. And that
Yeah.
and that and that brand went through some very, very difficult
Mhm.
times.
Yeah, no, and I can relate to that. I think that especially in the food business, and you brought it up, the margins are pretty thin. And so when you have a concept that works, you almost have to assume that growth in food costs, the growth in labor costs, to then really project out what the future is going to look like for the brand, and
Absolutely.
not staying close to your why can really, like you said, kind of make it go sideways.
Well, and even in the franchising world, right? There's other things
Hmm.
that are there. So AI is really sexy and
Right.
exciting right
Yes.
now, or
Hmm.
positioning your brand for a private equity acquisition, right? For
Hmm.
founders and leadership is really, but you can't lose sight of like what's happening right now.
Right. Yeah.
Right. You
Hmm.
want to create that legacy that carries on even after any of those things or integrations of any of those
Right.
tools
Right.
beyond that,
Yeah.
day to day. So
Yeah. Well, speaking of the franchising industry,
yeah.
what do you think the industry is getting right now?
I think what's fun is um, consumers they're just changing. So um, I'm from a generation where we were more materialistic, right? When you turn 16, you got a driver's license, you
Yeah.
bought a car and all this. And nowadays kids are like, I'm gonna go to Europe for a year or like take these
Right.
gap years. And that was
Mhm.
never
Mhm.
talked about in my generation.
Mhm.
And so I think franchising is fun because it's getting you into like experiential things.
Mm.
Very, very cognizant about meeting consumers where they're at
Mm. Mhm.
and what they want, and then modifying to that. Delivery is an easy example, right?
Yeah.
And at first it was very clunky,
Mhm.
and you'd have like 15 iPads from all the
Mhm.
delivery places
Mhm.
up in the
Mhm.
locations if you were in food. But a lot of that's consolidating and you're getting it right. So I think being really receptive to what consumers are looking for,
Mhm.
and then new concepts are popping up right and left of things that are like great franchise ideas,
Yeah.
just even home services, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Some home services that was that there's profit in that,
Right.
but there is,
Yeah. Right.
And so, like even in my business, there's gold in those toilets,
That's
right?
right.
So
That's
cleaning
right.
those toilets
Absolutely.
is profitable.
Yeah.
And so, that's exciting to kind of see that they keep getting those kind of things right.
Mhm. Yeah. And so what do you think we're getting wrong?
If we get away from the core focus, so if we're
Mm.
losing sight
Mhm.
of unit
Yeah.
economics, right? At the end of the day, franchisees bought the business to be profitable. So if we lose sight of unit
Mhm.
economics, if we saddle the concept with too many costs,
Mhm.
if our marketing is ineffective, we're
Mhm.
failing to drive leads in our customers in, then we start to lose
Yeah.
our way. And every business is going to go through stages there.
Yeah.
It's how you recover from that or
Mhm.
how you get things going in the right direction.
What do you think distracts us from staying focused on unit level economics?
Yeah, well, first of all, there's so much noise, right?
Yes.
We have access to so much input and information
Mhm.
these days
Yeah.
from so many variety of sources. It's easy to go after the next shiny thing. So I look at this shiny thing and I think we could take that into the brand. And we're not asking ourselves, if that didn't exist, would we even be considering a change in this
Right. Yeah.
place?
Like what problem are you starting with the problem?
Exactly.
Mhm.
We're not bringing solutions looking for a problem,
Yeah.
right? We've
Mhm.
identified the problem. What are all
Right.
the solutions we
Mhm.
could bring?
Yeah.
And then bringing those shiny things in to
Yeah.
help with that. Also, I see some brands get a little bit away from that core focus
Mhm.
because these line extensions provide some short term profit, but I see
Mhm.
core competency fatigue.
Yes.
And then customer service goes down, and then customer retention drops, or customer service
Mhm.
falters. And
Yeah.
those are all death knells.
Well, and I want to dig a little bit deeper in that because you're absolutely right. And I'd
Okay.
like to put some concreteness
Sure.
into what we're talking about because I've seen it, you've seen it where, and let's start at that core focus.
Sure.
So you have your core product. This is what you're successful at. This is what we're driving and it's going great.
Yep.
And then you bolt on an add-on or a second service line. And all of a sudden you're shifted like, oh, wait, the customer wants that too. And if they want that, they want this. And you start to get further and further away from that core concept. And what I see happen is that we now get in the habit of looking for what is the next thing that the guest wants. And so instead of focusing on delivering excellence through that core product and the add-ons, not saying the add-on is wrong, but when our eye of finding the add-on becomes just finding another revenue stream, we have
Yes.
to ask ourselves, well, what is wrong with our current one? And if our current revenue stream is wrong, then our business model needs to evolve. Because
Yes.
that happens too, is that the,
Sure.
the core product
Absolutely.
doesn't evolve with consumer trends and consumer tastes. But back to the hedgehog concept, if we keep that concept, you will be able to even evolve your core product as long as you're with your why. And so at least that's what I see. I see, we chased a revenue stream, we saw some success with it for 6 months. And then we decide we need to add another one. And that's what pulls us off. What have you seen?
I see that sometimes there's things that are flash in the pan
Yeah.
too, right? Like
Oh,
this,
right.
right?
Yes.
So like this
Mm.
product is hot right now,
Yes.
but it doesn't have legs to go the distance.
Hmm.
So if you modify your business to build all these systems and things around that, and 2 years from now it's irrelevant, you waste a lot of time and energy.
Hmm.
Maybe there was some short-term profit in
Yeah.
it, but what did it cost you if you took those dollars and
Hmm.
kept them going on your core focus?
Hmm.
What was the opportunity cost there?
Hmm.
So I think we just got to take the time to really think through
Hmm.
anything we lose as an extension. In our business at Stratus, we do, business, it's all commercial cleaning.
Right.
So we'll come in and we'll clean your offices, and we're kind of like utility.
Hmm.
Once you hire us, you don't want to think about it,
Hmm.
right? When I
Hmm.
walk into the office,
Hmm.
lights come on, internet works, and man, if Stratus was here, the place is clean.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
we're like a hire and forget.
Yeah.
But we also come in and we're like, hey, the carpets are starting to look a little rough. And we all get a little office blind, or even in our stores, if you retail, like you get store blind,
Yeah.
you miss this thing.
Hmm.
Just you walk past it every day. And we can come in and freshen that up. That's a little line extension, but it's in our core competence. We're
Hmm.
not losing sight of it.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
we also say that as a percent of our business should not be more than this,
Mm,
because our real core focus, our real business is in the recurring revenue
mhm,
of the daily service
mhm.
contract.
Is that how you keep the focus, is to put some guardrails
We
around?
do. Yeah,
Okay.
we do. And so I'll give you an example. We had one territory, uh, uh, and what they did is instead of focusing on the recurring revenue contracts, they would grow those a little bit, but at a pretty slow pace. But they had a great relationship with some contractors. They were doing post construction cleans to the tune of like several $100,000 a month.
Mhm, mhm.
A situation happened, a falling out with that customer, and that just went away.
Mm,
Well, he was so far behind that he's like having to now catch up on the
right.
recurring revenue,
Yeah,
even though after being in business for a while, and that drop in income had him, he had to let some people go
yeah,
because all of a sudden
right.
it's like that revenue's not coming in.
Mm,
So he got excited by the shiny short
mhm,
term
mhm,
and didn't grow the long term value of his
mhm.
investment.
Yeah,
And those are the kind of pivots you got to stay on top of it and not lose sight of. He was well outside the guardrails
yeah.
and had been coached on that too.
Right, right. Well, I also find that we can get distracted by our franchisees.
Hmm.
The franchisees are in the market, they're seeing things happen. And look, the best idea comes from the field. And so I think from a leadership perspective, understanding what ideas to pursue, but then also understanding the capacity of your team is important. And so if you're not if you're not, and I think EOS is a great place to do this around prioritization and making sure that we are working on the highest priority items at any given time. And so is that the system you lean on to really make sure your bandwidth stays
Yeah, I think too. Just as a side note, I
Yep.
see the franchisees as the heroes of the industry,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And so they put it all on the line for this. And
Mhm,
so our job is to really serve them and
mhm.
do that well. I don't have unlimited resources, people
Right.
or capital, so I've got to look at those priorities and say which are the ones that have the best opportunity and drive the best profitability for
Mhm,
the brand forward. So, but I'm collaborative about it too. Because while I'd love to solve everything on our list, what are the ones that again is the biggest bang for the buck? Now,
mhm,
from time to time, we may disagree with franchisees on it, but we've had the conversation
mhm. Yeah,
about what the priority
right.
is. And so I would love to get it to the place where it's always we agree to disagree, but we're all on board and let's go forward and
Mhm.
execute it.
Yeah,
Doesn't always happen,
yeah,
but that's okay. That's part of just leading an
right.
organization. So EOS is helpful in making sure that while we're in the day to day, we do get a chance to stop on a weekly basis, look up where are we going against our core targets and stay on
Mhm.
target.
Yeah. No, I love
Yeah,
that. I'd love to switch gears a little bit
sure.
into your leadership journey and learn a little bit about some things that informed it. So, can you share with me maybe a lesson that you learned earlier in your career that you didn't realize was a leadership lesson at the time?
Yeah. It's funny that you bring that up. I think about, I was a very high performer always in
Mhm,
what I did and just love to execute, love to do really well. But it was a sole contributor roles,
mhm,
right? Like
mhm.
early on in my
Yeah,
career, like started out as a franchise business consultant at 7-Eleven stores,
yeah.
right? So did that was with Dunkin Donuts. And at my time at Dunkin Donuts, I was moving from kind of the individual contributor role to a team leader as a
Mhm,
regional director for the brand. And I wanted to come in and not be like the bottom of the pack on the scores, right? Rankings
mhm.
for like the
Yeah,
other regional directors, my peer group. And
yeah.
so
You
I
wanted
met,
to win.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I'm about winning. Like
yeah,
competition is in my top five
yeah.
strength finder strengths. So
Okay, love it.
it's important to me. But I spent some time with my mentor and he said, I said, I want to come in middle of the pack and then be able to work my way up from there. He goes, stop. He goes, it's not about you. It's not about you. Leadership is not about you.
Okay.
And so I was like, well, tell me more about that.
Right.
And he's like, it's about the ability to empower and enable your team, right? You're just
Mm,
helping guide it,
mhm,
but you need to empower them. You need to enable them, provide the guardrails,
mhm,
provide the
mhm,
coaching, but it's not about you anymore. It's
mhm.
about your team. That was a life lesson that I was like, oh, you know what? And I thought about some of the best leaders in my life,
Yeah.
and that's how they led.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So in my career, then that led to a kind of the concept of servant leadership.
Mm,
And my job is to serve franchisees, serve my team, remove roadblocks, blow them up, get them out of the way so we
yeah.
can go faster,
Yeah.
hire the right talent and go.
Yeah. Well, and I love that you mentioned that because if you think about the leaders that we look to and that we look up to, they're on the stage,
Yeah,
right? That they wrote the book and they are getting accolades
sure.
for the success of the business. And the best of those are saying, "Hey, it wasn't just me."
Yeah.
But they're not all saying, "Hey, it wasn't just me."
Correct.
And so being able to have a mentor in place to stop you and say leadership is not about you, it's
Yes.
about the team that you're leading. You know, it feels like it's, common sense, but I'm thinking about my own experiences and certainly it's not.
It's not. And I think, ego is a pitfall for a lot of
Yeah.
leaders,
Right.
especially if they're dynamic
Mm.
and really energetic
Yeah.
and you get on enough podcasts, you
Yes.
get articles written about you
Right.
drop a book out there, and all of a sudden you think you're, God's gift to franchising
Right.
or whatever industry you're in.
Yeah.
But that's a pitfall. Can't
Mhm.
keep doing that. And so I think a level of humility
Mhm.
is important.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love it. So tell me something that prepared you for this role that you didn't appreciate at the time.
So I worked for large brands right out of the gate. So
Mhm. Yeah.
7-Eleven, Burger King, Dunkin Donuts, great experience, great foundation on
Mhm.
economics and the business and how to run it well. Then I went into some smaller companies. And I'll give you an example. I worked for a company called Regency Lighting. It's a lighting distributorship and worked in a couple business units with them, but it's not this multi-billion-dollar
Yeah.
company.
Yeah.
So you're getting into the nuts and bolts of literally revenue recognition,
Mhm.
cash flow,
Mhm.
timing. You want to launch a project? Well, that project's going to require $9 million of capital up front.
Mhm.
And we're like at the time, $70 million company.
Mhm.
And it's like, who's going to get that
What
money?
is
And
it?
so
Where is it going to come from?
exactly where like my other brands be like, yeah, let's go. Right. Like
Yeah.
money
Right.
was like available. So getting really sensitive to those things, it was tough. You had to grind through a
Yeah.
lot of that.
Yeah.
But that was a game changer. The other thing is at those smaller companies, you're so much closer to the customer.
Yeah. Mhm.
And that forces those conversations. There's
Mhm.
like no hiding,
Mhm.
there's
Mhm.
just no
Yeah.
ability to like be in, you
Mhm.
got to be in front of the customer, accountability. Those are hard things to learn in a really small space,
Yeah.
but those were life lessons
Yeah.
that were fantastic. So I understand, thankfully, due to
Right.
like some of the leaders and CFO at the time and the CEO, understand that the cash flow all the way through. We're at a big company, you're
Right.
making more income and expense.
Right. Yeah.
But franchisees live in a cash flow world.
That's right.
And so
Mhm.
that gave me more empathy for the
Mhm.
cash flow world they live in. So kind of tying that around, tough lesson to like go through and have to
Mhm.
kind of like, I know business. Oh, wait a minute. I don't know it as well as I thought,
Right.
or I'm detached from what I learned in business school. Now I'm taking it forward.
Well, and I think it's detached is a good word because when
Yep.
you're working at those bigger companies, it's a machine
Hmm.
and you are a cog in the machine.
Yeah.
And you can get a lot of fulfillment at being a sole contributor, building teams, right? You have the opportunity to build
Yeah.
teams at big companies and driving big impact and big change because you have a bigger platform. And so then when you make the switch, I often see when people make the switch to the smaller companies, they really struggle. So you could have a high performer at a big company come into a smaller company, and we'll just use ops as an example, right? And you have an ops leader comes into a smaller company, and now like, no, we have to write the ops manual, we have to build this training tool, and you have to do it because you don't have a team.
Right.
And everybody struggles when they make that shift, and it's a good struggle. And I think that you make a great point of it is a good struggle because you learn so much at the big companies as far as how to lead, how to manage, and
Yes.
how a machine is supposed to work. And then bringing that knowledge to the smaller companies really does help the smaller companies try and act bigger. But at the same time, it could be a real struggle for people to make that switch and come to those smaller companies.
Absolutely.
I've been through that before.
But
Thought
you
you
know
were
what? You
like,
look back and you're grateful for it
yeah,
because
totally.
it shaped. I wouldn't be successful
Right.
today if I
Yeah.
hadn't gone through that phase.
Yeah.
And then of course the failures you run into in your career. There's things you do.
That's the
And
best learning,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. I was a VP of Friend Dev and did okay, but kind of went through a tough time. And I'm like, this is and left that company. But if I hadn't gone through that Friend Dev
Mhm.
season and realized that's really not my
Mm.
best cup of tea,
Mhm.
but I know what it takes to do it. Now I'm looking for the right person
Yeah.
to take that to the next level.
Right.
And so I hire an expert in it. So realizing what you do well and what you
Mhm.
don't do well, that's
That's
also
important.
important.
Yeah, that's good. All right, what do you think franchising needs more of?
Wow. I think on the franchising side for more, I would say just continued innovation, right? I think
Mhm.
we are there's just so much innovation coming down the pipe with all these new tools and things. And I think that innovation, though, has to translate into unit economics,
Yes.
right? I really look up
Mhm.
to Sam Ballas because he really preaches that.
Mm.
And as chair of the IFA, I know he's going to continue to talk to
Yeah.
us about it. But if we lose sight of that, then everything else we're doing doesn't really matter because
Mhm.
people get into business to make money. So
That's right.
I think it's a key opportunity to say that we need more of that because some brands come in. I was talking to an emerging brand and tell me about your top line.
Yep.
Okay. Like, where's that stacking against your competitors? Tell me about your EBITDA. And I was like, ooh, wow. And I
Yes.
said, okay, what are two things you could do that would drive more profit to the bottom line?
Mhm.
That if you, cost out of it or drive top
Mhm.
line with it. And so we had a good conversation
Oh,
about it.
yeah.
But I said, like, in the world of franchising, I know you're wanting to grow, but that bottom line is really small. And it's going to be hard for people to get capital.
Mm.
He's running into SBA loan
Mhm.
funding
Issues,
issues.
yeah.
And so I said, the margin of failure becomes very, very tight. You're like on a knife edge
Mhm.
of like, if it's going to make it or not. So
Yeah.
if anything you do to improve that, it improves the ability of it. So definitely more focused on unit economics, staying really close to that.
Well, and I think that what's challenging, especially for new leaders, is you are constantly getting bombarded by the new tool, the new thing, the new thing, the new thing. And it's hard to cut through that noise to
Sure.
understand what new thing is actually going to drive that bottom line. And to your point earlier, that's where the number one focus needs to be on the bottom line, but start with the problem.
Yeah.
Like, don't, yes, you're getting pitched a bunch of different solutions. You should start with the problem before you go seek out those solutions.
Right. If you don't really
Yeah.
clear, what's one thing I like about
Mm.
EOS, right?
Yeah.
You identify the problem
Yeah.
first,
Right.
then you discuss,
Right.
then you solve.
Right.
So we don't jump to solutions. We really want to understand kind of the 5 whys. If you have to do your wishbone, whatever,
Mhm.
or fishbone diagram, whatever you need to do to get to like the core root issue.
Mhm.
There's nothing worse than bringing a solution that doesn't address the problem,
Right.
but costs you money.
Yes. Right. That's for sure. What do you think we need less of?
Government regulation.
Okay.
So I'm a small government guy through and
Mhm.
through. But in order to get there, all franchisors need to do a really good job on the things I already kind of talked about. So
Mhm.
because when someone trips up, right, government steps in,
Mhm.
FTC's taking a closer look at it. We don't need that. And I think that's one thing I love about IFA
Mhm.
and even being at the conference this week is the ability to like prop up and help some of these brands so they don't step on landmines that we've seen other brands
Yeah.
land on and make sure they're positioning well. Because if one of those messes up, it could invite unwanted scrutiny.
Yeah.
Not that there's anything to hide, but government isn't always really good at solving things.
Well, and the people who are making the laws aren't experts in every single thing they're making laws about.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And there's often, we can all think of examples of unintended consequences.
Mhm.
This sounded like a
Right.
good idea,
Right.
but resulted in
Yeah.
actually the exact opposite.
Right.
And so, less of that would be good.
Yeah.
I think we have an opportunity with this American Franchise Act to put a win in place and keep things going forward for
Yeah.
franchising. That'll be a significant win this year. I'm looking forward to making that happen. Well,
Awesome.
doing my part and helping to make it
Yeah.
happen.
Okay, awesome. All right, so I have a crystal ball.
Sure.
I want you to look into it and
Okay.
tell me what does Stratus Clean look like in 10 years?
Yeah. So I would say in 10 years, we better be close to $1 billion in the revenues.
Okay.
I want to we're in the US and Canada. We
Mhm.
should be in at least at that time, at least 8 more countries where our model fits well.
Yeah.
Right. I'm a fast follower. I watch our competition where they go well and where it doesn't go well,
Oh, I
and
love
where there's opportunity
Yeah.
to go there. I would say that we have a world-class culture,
Okay.
meaning that when you come in, we may not always agree on everything, but you always feel heard.
Mm.
You always feel considered. And if we do disagree, you at least were able to air that out but we can move forward. We can agree to
Mhm.
move forward.
Yeah.
So I want a culture that both at the corporate level
Mhm.
and at the franchisee level is awesome. One of our corporate values is like no jerks.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't care how much of a rainmaker you are. If you're a
Mhm.
jerk, you're not here.
Yeah.
And so we want to bring in people who want to be there, want to hang out. And that's one of the things I love. Our franchisees, the team, we love to hang out even after work. So
Mhm.
it's not just we're traveling together and we're go hide in our rooms when we're done or at our
Yeah.
annual meetings, everybody's hiding. We do love to hang out. We do love to socialize together. I love to travel to the territories and meet with the franchisees, customers, everything. It's just a great time.
Well, that's awesome. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank
I
you.
appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
Brought to you by my podcast host.